I woke up at 6:30, as usual. My phone rang, signaling the start of another workday. I quickly silenced the alarm, not wanting to wake my daughter Emma, and slowly got out of bed, feeling a light exhaustion from a short night's sleep. It was Friday, and all I could think about was finishing my work quickly and spending the weekend with Emma and my mom. Rachel was away on a business trip again. I had gotten used to her constant travel, though sometimes it weighed on me. It was just Emma and me for the next few days, and I was already mentally planning how we would spend our time. Walks in the park, a visit to Grandma's, playing together. These moments had become a breath of fresh air in the hustle of life. I made breakfast, quietly walked into my daughter's room, and gently shook her by the shoulder. She opened her eyes, smiled, and sleepily whispered, "Dad, just 5 more minutes." I didn't push her, letting her stay in bed a bit longer, and went to get myself ready. Half an hour later, we were sitting in the car, heading to daycare. The morning was clear, and the sunlight filtered through the trees, lighting the road and lifting my mood. After dropping Emma off at daycare, I headed to the office. There wasn't much planned for the day, just updating a course on the website, which would take a couple of hours. I knew that after finishing, I could return home earlier than usual, something unusual for my typical Friday morning. By 10:30, I was already wrapping up my work. Quickly gathering my things, I decided to head home. The thought crossed my mind that I now had a few free hours to be productive. Maybe I could tidy up around the house, make lunch, or start packing for the weekend trip. When I entered the house, the silence felt unusual. I dropped my bag on the couch, went to the kitchen, and made myself a sandwich. Suddenly, I remembered that I had wanted to organize the bedroom for a while. Last time, when we were preparing for a family picnic, I had thrown a pile of stuff together in disarray and never sorted it out. With a sandwich in one hand, I began tossing things into a suitcase. During this rush, I accidentally knocked a bottle of shampoo off the nightstand, and it rolled loudly under the bed. Feeling annoyed at my own clumsiness, I got down on my knees to retrieve it. At that moment, my hand brushed against something soft and rectangular. I pulled it out. It was a small notebook. A diary. Rachel's. She had never mentioned keeping a diary. What was it doing under the bed? My curiosity took over. My heart began to race as I sat on the bed, holding the diary in my hands. I wasn't sure if I should open it. Everything inside me told me not to. It was her private thoughts. But a part of me screamed that maybe there was something I needed to know. I opened the diary. My fingers were slightly trembling. The first few pages were filled with everyday notes about the kids, work, and what we did together. But then I came across an entry that immediately made my heart sink. The date, April 15th, 2008. Today, I had a meeting with Grayson. He once again started accusing me of making a mistake with his account calculations. I told him I didn't know anything, that it must have been a mistake. But he was adamant. He said I had a choice. Either I become his personal assistant, or he exposes all the mistakes, and I lose my job and possibly face legal trouble. I quickly flipped through a few more pages, scanning the lines until I found the next entries. I feel trapped. Grayson offered me a way out. He said I would need to accompany him to events, behave according to his standards. He promised me support, assured me that all the problems would disappear if I agreed. It seemed like the only way out. I lowered the diary and stared into space. Thoughts swirled in my head. What kind of way out was this? What kind of standards? It was too terrifying to read further, but I couldn't stop. My heart was beating faster than ever. I turned to the next page and found another entry that chilled me to the bone. Today was my first day in the new office. He insisted that I follow his rules. Wear shorter skirts, no underwear. If I didn't comply with his conditions, everything he promised me would collapse, and I'd lose everything. He's got me in his grip, and I can't fight him. My hand shook as I closed the diary and placed it on the bed. I sat at the edge, feeling a wave of anger and pain wash over me. I didn't even know what to do. When I closed the diary, it took me several minutes to gather myself. Inside, everything was boiling: anger, pain, disappointment. The thought that my wife could hide something like this was unbearable. But stopping there was impossible. I knew I had to keep reading. The truth was waiting for me, hidden between the pages of this little diary. And it was dark. I opened the diary again. My fingers were still trembling, but I forced myself to focus. The pages, covered in Rachel's neat handwriting, looked like innocent notes, but now I knew that deep secrets were hidden behind those words. The next entry was even more shocking. Today, Grayson asked me to go to dinner with clients. He said it was important for business. I couldn't refuse. It was my first time going to such an event, and I felt awful. But he insisted that I represent the company, which meant I had to look my best. His demands about my appearance were getting stranger. He asked me to wear the most revealing dress I had, and, as before, no underwear. I understood that this was not just a request. It was an order. Everything inside me turned upside down. I sat on the bed, gritting my teeth and feeling the anger burning inside me. I kept reading, as if I couldn't stop, unable to believe that this was real. Dinner was awful. The clients kept staring at me like I was an object, discussing me, almost touching me. Grayson pretended not to notice, even encouraged them. At the end of the evening, one of the clients offered to drive me home. I tried to refuse, but Grayson just nodded in his direction, as if it was a sign of agreement. I realized I had no choice. The client drove me to a hotel, but it didn't end there. I still can't believe it happened. I jumped up from the bed, unable to sit any longer. My head was spinning with hatred for this man, who had turned my wife into his toy. I couldn't believe she had let him do all of this. But I couldn't entirely blame her. She had been cornered, forced to make a choice that left her with no way out. But now, what was I supposed to do? I paced the room several times before sitting back down to continue reading. After that incident, I felt like I was living in a nightmare. Everything started to feel like some kind of dark game where I couldn't find a way out. Grayson kept using me for his dirty deals. Every time I tried to refuse, he reminded me about the money, how easily he could destroy everything I had worked for. At some point, I stopped feeling alive. I just did what he told me. The following entries detailed how this game continued. Grayson kept pushing her into new situations, drawing her deeper into this world where she had lost her freedom. She attended dinners, meetings, fulfilling his requests, sometimes sacrificing herself for something that had long lost its meaning. I flipped through several more pages and came across an entry that abruptly changed my perception. At one of the dinners, Grayson hinted that if I continued doing everything he asked, he'd turn a blind eye to my financial problems. He started talking about how easily the debt could disappear. At that moment, I realized he had complete control over me. I could no longer think about freedom, only about survival. He had become my jailer, and I didn't know how to escape. It felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't sit still any longer. I rushed outside, feeling the ground slip beneath my feet. The air felt thick, as if there wasn't enough oxygen. I breathed slowly, trying to hold back the urge to scream. But this was only the first blow. I went back inside, closing the door behind me. The diary still lay on the bed, its pages open before me. I knew I had to finish reading. The final entries revealed even more. Grayson started hinting that he wanted more than just my company at dinners. I tried to refuse, but his threats became more explicit. He said he could ruin my family, that he knew too much. I felt like I was in a cage with no way out. I know that if I don't comply, he'll destroy everything I have. Each word felt like a knife. I knew reading further was unbearable, but I couldn't stop. I had to know the whole truth. Yesterday, he made me do something I couldn't even imagine. I hate myself for it. I wish I could just disappear, never to see him again. But he keeps going, and I don't know how to stop it. I closed the diary. Inside, everything was burning, but I couldn't decide what to do next. The silence in the house was deafening, and the only thing reminding me that I was still here, still alive, was the pounding of my heart. Rachel would be back in a couple of days. I had been restless for hours. Rachel's diary, its contents like poison, seeping into every thought, every cell in my mind. I kept glancing at the clock. She was supposed to be back in 2 days. What to do next? I didn't know. My mind was swirling with chaotic images of what I had read. It didn't fit into the reality I thought I knew. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a text message. Mechanically, almost without thinking, I looked at the screen. It was from Rachel. Hi, honey, how are you and Emma? I hope to be home soon. Love you. Those words triggered something deep inside me, something I had buried long ago. Love you. After all this. After what I just found out. I wanted to scream. But instead, I just threw the phone on the couch and walked out of the house, slamming the door so hard it nearly came off its hinges. I needed fresh air. Walking around the house didn't help. Everything inside me was boiling, emotions crashing like thunder. I headed toward the garage, thinking I might go for a walk. But as I passed by the shelves with tools, I suddenly noticed something shiny on the rack. My eyes landed on a metal baseball bat, the one I used at picnics with friends long ago. I slowly approached the shelf and took it in my hands. The metal was cold, and that chill helped calm me down slightly. But instead of putting the bat back, I, without realizing what I was doing, walked outside with it. I strolled down the quiet street, the bat in hand, as if it could shield me from the pain tearing me apart inside. Neighbors glanced at me, but I didn't care. My entire consciousness was focused on one thought: what will happen when Rachel comes back? I pictured her walking into the house, smiling, pretending everything was fine. But I would know. I already knew everything. A car drove by, suddenly braking next to me. I froze as Frank, my neighbor from the next street over, leaned out the window. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked, noticing the bat in my hand. I nodded silently, but inside, everything was still boiling. I didn't know what to say. Frank gave me a suspicious look but decided it was better not to interfere and drove off. The hatred burning inside me hadn't subsided, but now it was more focused, like a tightly strung cord ready to snap at any moment. I returned home after half an hour, still feeling the cold metal of the bat in my hands. Sitting down on the couch, I reopened the diary. I needed to finish it. If I didn't find out everything now, I wouldn't be able to handle it anymore. I started flipping through the pages when I heard the front door creak open. Rachel. I tensed up. But it was Emma, back from her walk with Grandma. Her bright voice shattered the tense silence in the house. "Daddy, you're home." I quickly hid the diary under the cushion. The bat was still lying on the floor. "Hey, sweetheart, how was your walk?" Emma eagerly started telling me about her friends and the games they played, but I barely heard her. My thoughts were elsewhere, still spinning around everything I had discovered. I tried to stay calm for her, but every word Emma said hit me like a hammer, reminding me that our family was no longer what it used to be. Rachel had destroyed it. We had dinner together, and I put her to bed, but sleep wouldn't come for me. I sat in the darkness, staring at the faint light coming through the curtains. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was Rachel. My eyes froze on the screen. Should I answer? Should I confront her now? But I couldn't. I tossed the phone aside and got up from the bed. With every minute, the anger grew. I began pacing the room like a caged lion. Thousands of questions raced through my mind. Why? How long had this been going on? I couldn't bear it any longer. Tomorrow. I decided that tomorrow I would go to her office and make her tell me the whole truth. In the morning, I got up earlier than usual. I dropped Emma off at my mom's, asking her to watch my daughter for the whole day. She gave me a suspicious look but said nothing. I got back into the car and immediately headed for Rachel's office. I knew where she worked but had never gone there unannounced. As I pulled up to the building, my heart was pounding. I got out of the car, feeling the cold wind on my face. Walking inside, I headed straight for the elevator. The lobby was empty, and no one stopped me. Everything was happening too fast. I didn't have time to rethink my decision. The elevator doors opened on the 5th floor. I stepped into the long hallway, my hands in my pockets, trying to steady the trembling. Approaching her office door, I paused, took a deep breath, and knocked. "Come in," her familiar voice called. The door opened. Rachel lifted her eyes from the papers on her desk, and when she saw me, she froze. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was tense, and fear flashed in her eyes. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me and stepping closer. Rachel stood up from behind the desk, her face going pale. "What are you talking about? Why are you here?" I pulled the diary out of my pocket and placed it on the desk. Her eyes widened. "You found it," she whispered, taking a step back. Rachel stood there, staring at the diary lying on the desk. Her face had turned ashen, as if all her secrets had surfaced at once. The room was frozen in tense silence. She knew she couldn't hide anymore. "You weren't supposed to see that," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I did." I stepped closer, sharply. "All of it." She swayed back, as if my step had physically struck her. Her hands nervously fumbled with the edge of the desk. I was too close. Anger filled me, but I struggled to keep control. The words spilled out, but I knew that any movement could set off an explosion. "All this time, you've been lying," I said, my voice finally breaking through. "Do you think you can just act like nothing happened?" Rachel slowly sat back down in her chair, her eyes darting around the room as if she were looking for an escape. Her hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, I saw her gather her thoughts, trying to find the right words to explain herself. "I was trying to protect you and Emma," she finally exhaled. "It all happened so fast, I couldn't stop it. I was trapped, Jake, but I still love you." I cut her off, no longer able to hold back. "Love?" My words pierced her like a sharp knife. "If that's love, then what's hate? Grayson, dinners with clients, deals behind my back. That's not protection, Rachel. That's betrayal." She shot up from her chair, her face contorting with pain and fear. "Jake, you don't understand. I didn't want this." She wrapped her arms around herself as if hoping to shield herself from my accusations. "Grayson forced me. I couldn't leave. He threatened us. Threatened our family." "Threatened?" My voice grew quieter, but the anger didn't fade. "Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you come to me for help?" She remained silent, trying to find the words, but the answer was too obvious. She didn't trust me. She chose a path of lies and manipulation, hiding everything until it was too late. "It's over, Rachel. You made your choice," I said, crossing my arms over my chest. "Now I'm making mine." She froze, realizing that no words could help her now. I grabbed the diary off the desk and headed for the door. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something, but I didn't give her the chance. The door slammed shut behind me with a loud bang. I quickly left her office building and headed to the car. My mind was buzzing with thoughts. All I wanted now was to end this once and for all. I felt betrayed, destroyed, but more than anything, I wanted justice. Or revenge. Getting into the car, I slammed the door shut and took a deep breath. The baseball bat, which I had grabbed in a fit of anger, lay on the seat next to me. My heart was pounding, but now I knew what to do. Everything that had happened left me no choice. I drove towards Grayson's office. His face flashed in my mind, a symbol of everything that had ruined my life. I imagined his smug, arrogant smile disappearing when I showed up. The drive passed by in a haze. All I could see were images of betrayal and pain swirling in my consciousness. Memories of how Rachel had once been my rock were now replaced by images of her with another man, her cowardly lies. When I arrived at Grayson's building, a cold knot formed in my stomach. I stood in front of the tall glass windows of his office, holding the bat in my hand. Inside, people were going about their day, unaware of what I was about to do. My heart was racing, but I didn't let fear take over. I pushed open the door and walked into the building, feeling the stares of the security guards at the entrance. They looked at me but said nothing. I confidently walked past them, heading for the elevator. Nothing could stop me. As the elevator doors closed, I felt the silence envelop me. I stood in the metal box, bracing myself for what would happen in just a few minutes. Thoughts raced through my head of Grayson smiling, manipulating my wife, destroying everything I loved. The elevator doors opened on his floor. I stepped into the hallway, and there it was, his nameplate on the door ahead. The final line. The bat was tightly gripped in my hand, and I could already hear the blood rushing in my ears. Everything froze for a moment. I pushed the door open, and it swung with a loud creak. Inside, sitting at his desk, was Grayson. He looked up from his papers, saw me, and immediately recognized me. The smirk on his face disappeared. "What the—" he began, but I was already across the room. The bat crashed into the edge of his desk with a loud bang, scattering papers everywhere. "Get up," I hissed, feeling the anger controlling my every move. "Get up, and we'll settle this." Grayson stood, his face turning pale. He took a step back, but the room was too small for him to escape. Listen, he started, trying to regain his cold composure. You don't want to do this. Let's talk. But I wasn't listening anymore. The bat came down on the chair with a dull thud, breaking it. Grayson stepped back again, but the bat struck his leg, making him cry out. My mind was clouded with rage, and I didn't stop until he was on the floor, clutching his leg in pain. You think you can just ruin someone's life like that? My voice was filled with fury. You think no one will come for you? He lay on the floor, his face contorted with fear and pain, the smug grin long gone. Please, he gasped, choking on his words. I can explain everything. But I didn't need explanations anymore. I knew this was how it had to end. The door behind me suddenly burst open, and I heard the shouts of the security guards. I turned toward the guards' shouts, feeling my rage mix with the adrenaline surging through my veins. 2 men in uniform charged at me, but I was ready. The bat landed with a dull thud against one of them, hitting his side, and he crumpled to the floor, clutching his ribs. The second guard lunged at me, trying to wrestle the bat from my hands, but I managed to shove him off. At that moment, I realized the situation was spiraling out of control. Grayson, still lying on the floor, writhed in pain, but the sneer had returned to his face. You'll regret this, he wheezed through clenched teeth, trying to get up. You don't know who you're messing with. The guard I had pushed off tried to rush at me again, but I dodged and swung the bat at his legs. He collapsed, screaming in pain, and I was already moving back toward Grayson. All the sounds around me seemed muffled, and all I could hear was the roar in my ears and his labored breathing. I pressed the bat against his chest, staring straight into his eyes. You destroyed my life, I said quietly, but my voice carried all the hatred I felt. Now it's your turn to pay for everything. He tried to say something, but I pressed harder, feeling his chest heave under the pressure. Stop! A loud voice suddenly called from behind me. I turned around. Rachel was standing in the doorway. She rushed into the office, her eyes wide with horror as she took in the scene before her. Her hands were shaking, and she clutched the doorframe as if trying to steady herself from collapsing. Jake, please, don't! Her voice was soft, almost pleading, but it was filled with fear. I looked at her, and for a moment, my fingers loosened their grip on the bat. In her eyes, I saw the woman I had loved for so many years, the mother of my child. But the instant I remembered what she had done, my heart filled with rage once more. You knew about this, I said, my voice now full of accusation. All this time, you were playing his dirty games behind my back. Jake, it's not like that. She stepped closer but froze when she saw me raise the bat. I didn't want this. You have to understand, I was trying to protect us. I was trying to protect Emma. Protect. I stepped forward, and she froze. You think this is protection? This is betrayal. Grayson tried to say something, but his voice was weak. His face twisted in pain as he looked at Rachel with a strange mix of fear and disdain. It's over, Rachel, I said, looking her straight in the eyes. You chose him. Now I choose justice. She took another step forward, her face pale. Please, her voice trembled, for Emma's sake, don't do this. The mention of our daughter hit me harder than I expected. I froze in place, the bat still gripped tightly in my hands, but something inside me wavered. I pictured my daughter's face, her innocent smile, how she would run to hug me after kindergarten. How would she look at me after all this? I stood at a crossroads, continue down the path of revenge or stop for her sake. At that moment, 2 more guards burst into the room. They grabbed my arms, wrestling the bat away. I didn't resist. My strength seemed to drain, and I allowed them to pin me to the floor. My eyes met Rachel's, who was trembling, covering her mouth with her hand to stifle a scream. I saw her lips moving, but the sounds no longer reached me. Everything around me seemed to fade into a fog. The voices of the guards became distant, and Grayson's face dissolved into an endless chain of shadows. I felt the weight of my rage lift, leaving behind only a cold emptiness. They led me down the hallway, my wrists cuffed, my shoulders slumped, as if I were on autopilot. My thoughts spun around Emma. Had I stopped for her? Or had I failed to finish what I started? Her face, her smile, flashed before my eyes once again. The world around me seemed foreign, as if it didn't belong to me anymore. They led me outside, where red and blue police lights flashed. The cold air hit my face, but it couldn't clear my mind. My head was filled with emptiness, and only the dull ache of realizing that everything was falling apart slowly took hold of me. My hands were bound in cuffs, my shoulders slumped, and I moved as if in a daze. The police officer sat me in the car, and the door slammed shut with a dull thud. I stared out the window, seeing nothing. Cars, people, buildings all blurred together into one endless smear. In my mind, there was nothing but the image of Emma. Her face was in front of my eyes, her laughter echoing somewhere in the distance, like a memory of a past I could never return to. As the car pulled away, I finally understood. Everything I had lost would never come back. I had lost Rachel, lost my faith in her. And now, what was left? How would I explain to Emma what had happened? How would I ever look her in the eyes again? The car moved slowly, and I felt the helplessness inside me growing. I had thought I could punish Grayson, avenge everything he had done to my family, but in the end, I had become a prisoner of my own rage. Now I sat in the police car, realizing that my entire life was on the verge of completely falling apart. When the car stopped at the station, the officer opened the door and pulled me out. Inside, it was as cold as outside. I saw faces passing by me again, but they were all unfamiliar, faceless. I walked with my head down, trying not to think, not to feel. They put me in a holding cell, where I sat alone. Silence surrounded me, and in it, I could only hear my own breathing. Nothing could have prepared me for this moment. I had expected anger, shouting, but inside there was only emptiness. I sat on the bench, leaning against the cold wall, staring into the void. I don't know how much time passed, but suddenly, I heard footsteps. The door to the cell opened, and the detective I had seen earlier stood before me. He sat down on the edge of the table opposite me, looking at me intently. "Jake Baxter." His voice was firm, but not judgmental. I nodded without lifting my head. "We've learned everything. Grayson filed a report. You're in serious trouble, but we have information that could help." I raised my eyes, not understanding what he was saying. "We've been investigating Grayson and his company," the detective continued. "He's involved in something much bigger than just coercing your wife. There are dozens of women he's blackmailed and manipulated, just like your Rachel. We have evidence, and if you agree to cooperate, you have a chance to avoid prison." I stared at him, and the words he was saying slowly began to make sense. A chance? After everything that happened? "We can bring this to an end, Jake," the detective said, looking me in the eyes. "Your revenge doesn't have to be violent. We can take this to court. Grayson will go to jail. But we need your help." I was silent, thinking over his words. Rachel's voice, her pleas, her fear still echoed in my head. I had seen her cry, watching everything spiral out of control. Maybe this was my only chance. A chance for justice, not revenge. "What do you need from me?" I asked, my voice hoarse but steady. The detective straightened up, looking at me with a slight smile. "We need your testimony and the records from Rachel's diary. That will help us expose the entire network Grayson has been building for years. Are you ready to do that?" I closed my eyes for a moment, remembering everything my family had gone through. Emma, Rachel, their future, my future, all of it now depended on whether I made the right choice. "Yes," I finally exhaled. "I'll help." The detective nodded, standing up. "You made the right decision, Jake. This won't bring back everything you've lost, but it'll be the start of something new. We'll be in touch." He left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Silence surrounded me once again, but this time it didn't feel so frightening. I knew there was a long fight ahead of me, but it wasn't the same battle I'd been waging before. Now I wasn't alone. Now I was certain that Grayson's story would come to light, and he would face the justice he deserved. And that's where we come to the end of our story today. If you liked this story and aroused your emotions, please support us with likes and share your impressions in the comments. Your reactions help our stories spread through algorithms. If this is your first time on our channel, join our community by clicking on the subscribe button. This inspires us to create new interesting stories for you. Thank you for watching the video to the very end. We are waiting for you in the next issue.